Imagine a world where the most advanced, most expensive military jets are supposed to be invisible, untouchable, the undisputed kings of the sky. What happens when that perceived invincibility is shattered not by a rival superpower, but by an unassuming underdog? For decades, the realm of military aviation has been a high-stakes drama, a theatrical display of technological might and national pride. You have the Americans with their multi-billion-dollar F-22 Raptors and F-35s, jets so astronomically expensive they practically demand their own gold-plated hangars. They swagger onto the global stage, confident in their technological supremacy. Then, lurking in the shadows, you find the Russians and the Chinese always watchful, always asserting the prowess of their own formidable machines, perpetually claiming they can outmaneuver anything the West throws at them. It's a constant, tense standoff, a very, very expensive pub argument played out on a global scale. But what if everyone overlooked a quiet participant, sipping a sensible, moderately priced beer in the corner? That's Sweden, and for a long time, few paid them much mind. Until now. Because on a day that began like any other, news began to leak from a highly classified NATO exercise, a revelation that sent a palpable jolt, a seismic tremor, through the entire military establishment. The Swedish jet, the JS-39 Gripen, had done something that by all accounts should have been impossible. It wasn't just a win, it was a fundamental challenge to the very foundation of modern air combat theory. This wasn't merely a technological upset, it was an intellectual assassination of a deeply held doctrine. How could a nation known more for flat-pack furniture and pop music manage to upend the aerospace giants? This single event would force a painful, yet necessary, re-evaluation of strategies, budgets, and the future of aerial warfare itself. What exactly transpired in the frozen expanse of the Arctic to trigger such a profound shift? Like stories like this? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on military technology. The initial reports from Operation Arctic Challenge 2025 were just whispers, fragments of data escaping the highly classified debriefings. They were the kind of rumors you instinctively dismiss, like hearing a local amateur has just won the Olympic marathon. But these whispers, initially faint, grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the corridors of power. Generals, usually stoic figures with faces carved from granite, were observed looking visibly pale, their usual composure replaced by an unsettling disquiet. Something extraordinary, something truly unsettling had occurred. This wasn't just a minor incident, it was an event that shook the confidence of the world's most powerful military alliance. The Arctic Challenge 2025 was no ordinary drill. It was designed to push the boundaries of NATO's cutting-edge air defenses to their absolute limit. The aggressors, a squadron of F-22 Raptors, America's premier stealth fighter, boasting unparalleled speed, altitude, and, most crucially, invisibility to radar. Their mission was clear: slip past the protective net, hit key targets, and prove their untraceable dominance. Defending the vast frozen airspace were some of Europe's finest, the powerful Eurofighter Typhoons, the agile French Rafales, and, almost as an afterthought, a single squadron of Swedish Gripens. The American pilots, nestled within the sophisticated cockpits of their Raptors, would have been feeling supremely confident, perhaps even a touch smug. Flying an F-22 is often likened to being handed the keys to God's own chariot. You are faster, you are higher, and most importantly, you are a ghost, or so the doctrine proclaimed. The very essence of the F-22's design is built upon stealth, the ability to strike before your enemy even knows you're there. How could a less expensive non-stealth fighter possibly contend with such an apex predator? The Gripen, however, didn't play by the established rules of engagement. While other jets were frantically trying to locate the Raptors using their own powerful radars, a bit like shouting in a library to find someone who's whispering, the Gripen executed a maneuver that was as brilliant as it was unexpected. It didn't try to outshout the F-22, it simply listened more intently. Instead of relying solely on its own primary radar, which would instantly give away its position, the Gripen leveraged its advanced sensor suite. This wasn't just one system. It was a sophisticated network, an interconnected web of intelligence gathering. The centerpiece of this innovative approach was a revolutionary new infrared search and track, or IRST, system. This skypod doesn't search for radar reflections, which stealth technology is designed to minimize. No, this system hunts for something far more fundamental: heat. And even a stealth fighter, for all its clever angles and radar-absorbent paint, is still a very, very hot piece of machinery, a powerful engine generating immense thermal energy. The Gripen, flying low and using the terrain to expertly mask its own signature, essentially adopted a strategy of silent observation. It wasn't broadcasting its presence, it was absorbing information. It integrated data links from other friendly jets, from ground stations scattered across the landscape, and even from its wingman, meticulously piecing together a comprehensive, real-time picture of the entire battle space. It was like a detective assembling clues, one subtle piece of evidence at a time. While the F-22 remained a spectral entity to traditional radar, to the Gripen's sensitive thermal images, it was a blazing bonfire, an undeniable heat signature screaming its presence. Once you can see something so clearly, how long can it truly remain safe? The Swedish pilot didn't just get a fuzzy, intermittent blip on their screen, they received a crystal-clear heat signature, a definitive lock. And once you can see something, truly see it, you can undeniably target it. The Gripen pilot, utilizing this seamlessly integrated network of information, was able to maneuver into a prime firing position without ever having to activate their own main radar. Turning on a powerful radar would have instantly broadcasted the Gripen's location, making it an easy target. This was the perfect ambush, a silent stalk culminating in a decisive strike. The kill itself, though simulated, was brutal in its efficiency. The Gripen, having tracked the Raptor silently and persistently, achieved a first look, first shot, first kill scenario. It launched a simulated Meteor missile, a ridiculously advanced, beyond visual range, air-to-air weapon that the Gripen is uniquely designed to exploit to its maximum potential. By the time the F-22 pilot's sophisticated warning systems screamed to life, it was already too late. The missile was in the air, a phantom threat mirroring the one it pursued, and for all intents and purposes, unstoppable. The Raptor, the multi-billion-dollar ghost, the apex predator of the skies, had been exercised, defeated, by a jet that costs a mere fraction of its price. This wasn't just a simple kill in a training exercise. It was, as some observers later described it, an intellectual assassination. The Swedes hadn't just brought a knife to a gunfight, they had brought a neurotoxin, a subtle, debilitating weapon that targeted the very core of the opponent's strategy. What kind of shockwaves would such an unexpected victory send through the world's military powers? The shockwaves were instantaneous, reverberating far beyond the confines of the Arctic Circle. The world, or at least the part of it that wears uniforms, studies geopolitics and worries about strategic advantage, collectively gasped. This wasn't merely a minor upset or a lucky break. This was the equivalent of a Sunday League football team turning up at Wembley and absolutely thrashing Manchester City 5-0. For decades, the entire strategic doctrine of Western air power had been built upon one simple yet eye-wateringly expensive idea: stealth. The ability to be virtually invisible to radar was paramount. The F-22 Raptor, the ultimate expression of this philosophy, was designed to be a ghost, a phantom that could kill you before you even registered its presence. It was supposed to be the undisputed king, unchallenged and untouchable. And then the little Swedish jet, a machine designed with a completely different philosophy, had just proven that the ghost could, in fact, be seen. And not just seen, but hunted, tracked, and defeated. The very foundations of air combat strategy didn't just tremble, they cracked, threatening to crumble under the weight of this new reality. Imagine the palpable tension, the sheer panic within the NATO command bunker. The air would have been thick with the smell of stale coffee and profound disbelief. On the colossal screens, they would have watched the simulation unfold, confident blue icons representing friendly NATO forces, among them the ghostly, almost untouchable icons of the F-22s. Then a single, plucky red icon, the Gripen, did something utterly unexpected. It didn't run, it didn't hide, it turned, it danced, it engaged, and then a simulated missile lock, a kill. The blue F-22 icon vanished from the screen. Silence. Someone, somewhere, probably dropped a biscuit into their tea. The king of the sky had been dethroned, not by a bigger, more powerful king, but by a clever, nimble, and infuriatingly efficient little prince from the north. Had the game truly changed so fundamentally? To truly appreciate the magnitude of what the Gripen accomplished, one must understand just how profoundly different it is from the formidable jets it challenged. Think of the American F-22 Raptor as a heavyweight boxer, enormous, packed with muscle, designed to deliver a knockout blow from long range, relying on its sheer power and stealthy invisibility. Its strength lies in being unseen, unheard, striking from beyond the horizon with overwhelming force. Now consider the Saab Gripen. If the F-22 is that colossal heavyweight, the Gripen is a nimble, wiry martial artist. It's small, incredibly light, and powered by a single, highly reliable General Electric engine, the same family used in the proven FA-18 Super Hornet. It wasn't built with the primary goal of all-aspect stealth, that radar-evading cloak that defines the F-22. Instead, the Swedes chose a different path, a path of intelligent design and strategic cleverness. The Gripen does possess a small radar cross-section, making it harder to spot than older fourth-generation fighters like an F-16. But it's not true stealth in the F-22 sense. It's semi-stealthy and, crucially, extraordinarily agile. This combination makes it hard to find, but even harder to hit once engaged. The core difference in philosophy is stark. Where the F-22 prioritizes invisibility, the Gripen's superpower lies in its network-centric approach, its sensor fusion, and its advanced data links. It posits that you don't necessarily need absolute invisibility if you know exactly where your opponent is at all times and can guide a missile from over the horizon with pinpoint accuracy. How did a nation with a relatively modest defense budget arrive at such a disruptive philosophy? To truly grasp the essence of the Gripen, you have to understand Sweden itself. For centuries, this Scandinavian nation has been shaped by a fierce commitment to independence and a pragmatic philosophy of armed neutrality. Imagine being a relatively small country, sharing a long, porous border with a very large, historically unpredictable bear. Yes, Russia. You can't hope to match the bear in sheer size or overwhelming strength, can you? So you've got to be smarter. You have to embody the spirit of a porcupine, prickly, tough to attack, and honestly, just not worth the trouble. This kind of thinking, this deeply ingrained survival instinct, is baked into every single nut and bolt of their military hardware. The core of their defense strategy is known as the dispersal strategy. And the Gripen, well, it is the ultimate, most potent expression of that idea. Oh, and the name itself, Gripen, means the griffin, a mythical beast with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle. It's a perfect, powerful symbol for strength rooted on the ground and dominance soaring in the air. The Swedish Air Force always knew they couldn't afford vast, sprawling, and inherently vulnerable air bases, so they conceived a system where their Air Force could operate from, quite literally, almost anywhere. The Gripen was engineered from the ground up to take off and land on short, 800-meter stretches of ordinary public roads, and it's built to be serviced by a small team of conscripts with minimal training using relatively simple, robust tools. A team of just 6 people can refuel and rearm a Gripen with air-to-air missiles in less than 10 minutes. That's an absolutely bonkers capability, virtually unparalleled. While other air forces are tethered to their vulnerable superbases, the Swedish Gripens can scatter across the country, transforming into an impossible-to-find pop-up air force, hiding out in forests, operating from motorways, appearing and disappearing at will. This philosophy of rugged self-sufficiency extends to every aspect of the jet's design. It has to withstand brutal Scandinavian winters, operate flawlessly in deep snow and treacherous ice, and function far from the comfort of a heated hangar. How would the rest of the world react to such a radical and effective demonstration of independent thinking? The news of the Gripen's shocking success didn't remain confined within the highly discreet walls of military circles for long. It erupted onto the global stage, sending palpable shockwaves through defense ministries, corporate boardrooms, and international alliances alike. For countries agonizing over which multi-million-dollar fighter jet to buy, the decision suddenly became infinitely more complicated. Nations in Asia, in South America, in Eastern Europe, all of whom couldn't possibly afford the astronomical price tag of an F-35, suddenly saw a viable, combat-proven, and significantly more affordable alternative. The Gripen wasn't just the budget option anymore, it was now undeniably the smart option, a strategically astute investment. Saab's phone lines, the manufacturer of the Gripen, must have been ringing off the hook, besieged by inquiries from around the globe. This was a sales triumph born from operational brilliance. For the United States, this was a wake-up call of monumental proportions, reverberating through the highest echelons of the Pentagon. The entire export strategy for their immense defense industry, particularly for the F-35, was predicated on its supposed invincibility, its unmatched stealth capability. This single exercise had, in one stroke, tarnished that meticulously crafted image. Potential buyers, now armed with this new information, began asking difficult, probing questions. If the Gripen, a relatively older and cheaper fourth-generation plus fighter, could achieve this, what was to stop Russia or China from developing similar or even more advanced technologies and tactics to counter American stealth? The reaction from Russia and China was predictably one of quiet, almost smug, satisfaction. Their state-controlled media reported the story with thinly veiled glee and triumphant headlines. It confirmed their long-held argument that the West's perceived over-reliance on overly complex, high-cost stealth technology was, in fact, a strategic blunder, a vulnerable Achilles heel. The Gripen's success had not only validated other design philosophies, but had also inadvertently offered a clear roadmap on how to potentially defeat America's most prized aerial assets. It was a gift wrapped and delivered by the Swedes. For the rest of the world, it was a powerful reminder that true innovation isn't the sole property of superpowers. The Gripen's victory was a victory for the underdog, a global symbol of how brains and ingenuity can sometimes decisively triumph over sheer brawn. But how does all of this directly impact the average citizen? Now, you might be sitting there in your comfortable armchair, perhaps sipping a cup of tea, thinking, this is all very interesting, but it's about fighter jets and generals and classified exercises. What on earth has it got to do with me? And that, frankly, is a perfectly fair question. The answer, however, is a lot more than you might initially think. First, let's talk about your money. As a taxpayer in any Western country, a significant chunk of your hard-earned cash, your monthly contribution, goes directly towards defense spending. For decades, you and millions like you have been funding the development and procurement of planes like the F-35 on the implicit promise of overwhelming technological superiority of an untouchable edge. This single event in the Arctic sky, this quiet but profound victory, now throws a massive question mark over that presumed value, over that investment. It forces, or at least it should force, a public conversation. Do we continue to pour billions, even trillions, into a single, potentially flawed concept, absolute stealth? Or do we pivot, investing in a wider, more flexible, perhaps more affordable range of solutions, much like the Swedes have done? This isn't just about military strategy. It's intrinsically linked to national security, which directly affects your personal safety and the stability of your nation. The global balance of power is an incredibly delicate construct. A perceived, unassailable advantage can bring a certain kind of stability, yes, but it can also breed arrogance and lead to dangerous overreach. If that advantage is suddenly shown to be vulnerable, the entire world becomes a more unpredictable and potentially far more dangerous place. Adversaries become emboldened, seeing opportunities they didn't before. Allies become nervous, questioning the reliability of existing guarantees. This fundamentally changes dynamics in volatile hotspots from Eastern Europe to the South China Sea, and it can certainly shake the long-held confidence within NATO itself. The Gripen's success underscores that innovation isn't a monopoly held by superpowers. A small nation of just 10 million people managed to outthink and outmaneuver the world's largest military power. It demonstrated that clever design, smart tactics, and a focused strategy can be a great leveler, profoundly reshaping the geopolitical landscape. So, with all this upheaval, what truly happens next in the world of military aviation? The world of military aviation is now irrevocably split into two distinct periods: before Arctic Challenge 2025 and after. In the before times, the path forward seemed clear, almost predetermined. Stealth was king, an unquestioned dogma, and the F-35 was its designated heir apparent, the future embodied. The overarching goal was to engineer jets that were essentially invisible, black holes on radar screens, undetectable by any means. But the Gripen's stunning performance, that single simulated kill, has utterly shattered that linear thinking. It has unveiled another way, an alternative path that doesn't rely on making your aircraft an invisible ghost, but rather on making the entire battle space vibrantly visible to your pilot. It's a fundamental paradigm shift, from hiding in the dark to turning on a giant, all-seeing floodlight that illuminates everything. This changes absolutely everything for air forces around the globe that simply cannot afford a fleet of multi-billion-dollar stealth bombers. The immediate consequence is that 4.5 generation fighters, jets like the Gripen, the Eurofighter Typhoon, and the Rafale, have been given an entirely new lease on life. Previously, they were often viewed as mere stopgaps, transitional aircraft on the way to a fully stealth-centric future. Now they are viewed as credible, vital, and strategically necessary assets. Defense planners are rapidly realizing that a mixed fleet might, in fact, be the smartest, most resilient approach. This involves a smaller number of high-end stealth jets, essential for kicking down the door in highly contested airspace, backed up by a larger number of highly capable, networked, and significantly more affordable fighters like the Gripen to control the broader skies. The underdog now has a defined and deeply respected role within the pack. It's no longer just the budget option, it is a strategic necessity, an indispensable part of a balanced defense. This event will inevitably trigger a new kind of arms race, but not one of raw speed or maximum altitude. This will be an arms race of electrons and algorithms, of data processing and artificial intelligence. The critical question is no longer, can you see me, but rather, can you process information faster, more accurately, and more intelligently than me? Companies like Saab, which have specialized in this software-centric, network-driven approach for decades, are now in an incredibly powerful and enviable position. Other major manufacturers will scramble to catch up, desperately trying to replicate the Gripen's revolutionary combat cloud concept. What does this mean for Sweden itself? And what will the final legacy of this moment be? For Sweden, this is a moment of immense national pride and a massive strategic victory on the global stage. Their unique philosophy of defense, built on armed neutrality, smart innovation, and a pragmatic understanding of their geopolitical position, has been resoundingly vindicated. The Gripen is no longer just a Swedish or a niche European fighter. It has been elevated to a global benchmark for smart, efficient, and profoundly effective air power. This success will undoubtedly guarantee the future of the Gripen program for decades to come, attracting a wave of new export orders that will, in turn, fund even more advanced research and development. The little porcupine from the north has not just shown the world its quills, it has proven they are far longer and sharper than anyone ever imagined. It has demonstrated that you don't need the astronomical budget of a superpower to generate superpower-level ideas and achieve superpower-level results. The underdog has truly grown a new, very sharp set of teeth. But beyond the immediate military and economic implications, the Gripen's triumph also sends a powerful message about human ingenuity and the spirit of innovation. It reminds us that constraints, whether financial, geographical, or political, can often be the greatest catalysts for creativity. When you can't outspend your rivals, you must outthink them. When you can't outmuscle them, you must outmaneuver them. This event highlights the importance of fostering diverse approaches to problem solving, rather than converging on a single, dominant paradigm. It encourages smaller nations and nascent industries to challenge the status quo, to believe that their unique perspectives can genuinely disrupt established power structures. So, as the dust settles from this Arctic challenge, what enduring lessons will reshape the very nature of aerial combat for generations to come? In the end, this single, quiet moment over the Arctic represents far more than just a military upset or a technical victory. It marks the undeniable dawn of a new era in aerial warfare, a fundamental re-evaluation of how air forces will operate, train, and engage in the conflicts of tomorrow. The age of unquestioned stealth supremacy, that almost mythical cloak of invisibility, is now emphatically over. It didn't end with a bang of a new super weapon, but with a clever piece of code, a sophisticated network, and a burst of infrared data proving that for every measure, there is often a smarter, more efficient countermeasure. For half a century, the driving force behind fighter design was the relentless pursuit of higher, faster, and less visible aircraft. The Gripen has decisively proven there is another, equally potent path. The modern fighter, we now understand, is no longer just a platform for weapons. It is the central nervous system of a vast, interconnected web of sensors, data links, and armaments. The best pilot in this new paradigm isn't necessarily the one who can pull the tightest turn or fly the fastest, but the one who can manage an overwhelming flow of information better, faster, and more decisively than their opponent. The Gripen hasn't made stealth technology obsolete. That would be an oversimplification. Instead, it has stripped away its aura of invincibility. It shows that for every multi-billion-dollar measure, there is indeed a clever, often cheaper, countermeasure waiting to be discovered or deployed. It reintroduces the critical elements of tactical cunning and electronic ingenuity, leveling a playing field that was, for too long, becoming dangerously unbalanced in favor of sheer budget. The implications of this event will cascade through military thinking for years, if not decades. It will undoubtedly force a painful but absolutely necessary rethink in the hallowed halls of the Pentagon and NATO, compelling them to adapt their strategies and investments. It will empower smaller nations, giving them a credible, effective means to defend their airspace against far more powerful aggressors. It will fundamentally change how pilots are trained, the weapons they use, and the tactics they employ in combat. The future of air combat will be a hybrid, a complex and dynamic dance between stealthy penetrators and agile, network-centric defenders. It will be a world where information dominance is paramount and adaptability is the ultimate weapon. So the next time you think of Sweden, don't just conjure images of flat-pack furniture, delicious meatballs, or safe family cars. Think of the Gripen. Think of the small, clever nation that dared to look at the established rulebook, understood its limitations, and then, with quiet brilliance, wrote a compelling new chapter in the history of aerial warfare. What other long-held doctrines might be ripe for such a revolutionary challenge?